What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if neglected Naruto joins another village? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. In the meantime I've decided to give you all a treat for being so patient and am rewriting a new story that developed out of an idea I had about a young Naruto, in this case 4 years old, being raised by someone who's been there. This story was originally posted on and was the only one I had saved on a disk prior to the crash. If you've read it there then I hope you enjoy the changes that have been made as well as the new direction that the story will be taking. If this is your first time reading this story then I hope that you enjoy my work. It was just past sundown by the time the man reached the gates of the village, but already he could hear the music and laughter coming from inside the city walls as the sounds of the festival reached his ears. Choosing to ignore the revelry for the moment, he walks up to the sentries standing at the gate as he hands his passport over to them. The two Chunin are less than thrilled at having to skip the festivities as they are forced to endure yet another night of guard duty. All had seemed well until they caught sight of the man now standing before them. The man was dressed from head to toe in black clothing that seemed to match his short military-style onyx hair and coal eyes. The man gave off an aura of both confidence and power that the Chunins had felt the moment he had come into view. While the first Chunin inspected the man's passport, his partner maintained a weary eye on the stranger. His sleeveless trench coat was opened and revealed a utility belt with 2 visible pouches on either hip as well as what appeared to be 2 kunai holsters on each leg. In addition to his coat, the man wore some type of black-ribbed Anbu uniform with, at least to the Chunin, an unidentifiable seal on the back of each hand. The man was obviously a shinobi, though he wore no discernible hite to identify to which village his loyalties belonged. Everything seems to be in order, the first Chunin told the man. About how long will your stay be? He asked when he handed the man back his passport. That depends on how my meeting with the Hokage goes, the man answered when he put the item away. He gave the guards an informal salute before he made his way further into the village. Doesn't look like anything's changed since the last time I was here, he thought to himself before he faded from their sight. A frightened boy races through the streets of Konoha as an angry mob chases after him. This scene is nothing new to the village. In fact, it has become something of recent pastime to chase the boy they all view as the monster that destroyed their homes and killed their family members. The boy turns down an alley hoping to find a place to hide, only to curse softly for running into a dead end. As the crowd of villagers move into the alley, cutting off his only means of escape, the boy sits on the cold wet ground clutching an old worn teddy bear as if the stuffed toy might somehow protect him. "You're finished now, demon brat," one of them says as he steps closer to the boy. "We've suffered your existence long enough," he says as 3 of his friends step out of the crowd to stand beside him, forming a type of human wall between him and the rest of the mob intent on killing him. The stranger is walking down the street on his way to the hotel when he sees a crowd gathered around the entrance of an alley. Curious as to what is going on, he leaps to the rooftop of a neighboring building and quietly makes his way towards the alley. The sight below him is one that he knows he will never forget for as long as he lives. Standing between a terrified young boy, cowering in fear of his life, are 4 shinobi who appear to be at least Chunin level, each pointing a kunai at the poor boy. Images of his own past momentarily flash through the man's mind as he recalls the terror he once felt as a child. Never again, he vows to himself as his anger rises at the scene below, not ever again. The man jumps down from his perch, placing himself between the poor child and the 4 shinobi. His anger only increases at the sight of leaf hite they each wear. What is the meaning of this atrocity? The man demands as he stares the 4 Chunin in the eye, directing his anger at them. "This doesn't concern you, friend," the first Chunin tells him. "We've got the situation well in hand. Now step aside and let us handle the demon spawn." The Chunin's response catches the man off guard, causing him to blink owlishly several times. "Say what?" the man asks in confusion. "The last time I checked I didn't have any children," he tells them. "I will not warn you again," the Chunin nearly yells as he points his kunai at the man blocking his path. "Leave now or you will share the same fate as the demon brat." "And as I've already told you," the man says, now more annoyed than angry, "I don't have any children, so stop insisting he's my kid." "Are you crazy?" one of the other Chunin asks. "We're not talking about you now, just hand him over before you get yourself hurt." The stranger's ears seem to perk up at that before he suddenly bursts out laughing. "You hurt me?" The man continues to laugh for a few moments as the mob's anger begins to shift from the boy behind him to the man himself. "Oh that's a good one," the man says as he wipes the tears from his eyes while bringing himself back under control. "4 Chunin and 20 drunken civilians hurt me, now I've heard everything." Taking a breath, the man looks at them once again, but this time with a mischievous grin on his face. "Listen boy, cause I'm only going to tell you this once. If you and your friends want to even attempt to hurt me, you'll need more than just 1 village worth of shinobi to do it. Now get lost." The man then turns his back to the mob and kneels in front of the still frightened boy. "Hey kid, what's your name?" he asks, gently lifting the boy's face so he can get a better look at it. The instant dark eyes meet blue, he goes into shock. "No, dear Cammy, no. You bastards," the man roars as his once forgotten anger explodes full force. In a flash, the man is gone from sight only moments before the dying screams of the would-be lynch mob fills the night air. An Anbu wearing a dog mask drops down from the rooftop to stand front the stranger as he surveys the carnage around him. The remains of 24 men and women litter the alleyway save for the area surrounding a now sleeping child curled up in the man's lap. The disposal unit is on their way, the Anbu tells the man. "Hokage-sama will wish to speak with you about what happened." The man looks down at the boys sadly before standing up slowly, careful not to wake the child. "Why didn't anyone tell me, Kakashi?" he asks, handing the boy over to the Anbu. "If I had known, I never would have come back sooner." "I don't know," the Anbu answers softly. "I only figured it out myself a few days ago." "What's his name?" the man asks. "Naruto Uzumaki," the captain tells him. "Kushina," the man speaks softly. The word barely a whisper, but the pain in his voice is nearly deafening. "Take him to my place," he tells the Anbu captain, "and stay with him till I get there." He doesn't wait for a reply before vanishing in a puff of smoke. The Hokage sits at his desk sighing tiredly as he turns his gaze away from his crystal ball. After all this time he has finally returned, he says to himself. Looking up at the pictures of the other Hokages, he gives a sad smile as his eyes fall upon the last portrait. "I am sorry that there wasn't more I could do," he tells the blonde man staring down at him. "But perhaps now that he's here, the boy's life will finally take a turn for the better." The door to his office opens as the stranger enters unannounced. "Why the hell wasn't I told about Naruto?" he demands. "You of all people had to have known, so why didn't you ever tell me, Oto-san?" The Hokage takes a tired breath as he signals for the man to take a seat. "I apologize for keeping Naruto's existence from you, Raven-kun," he tells his adopted son, "but I felt it better for the Naruto's safety if no one knew of his parentage." "Bullshit," Raven nearly yells. "If you were so worried about his safety, then you should have told me about him. You know better than anyone that I'd never let anyone harm him." "I know," the older man admits sadly, "but your training." "Screw my training," Raven interrupts him. "I was done with that when I came back Minato's inauguration. I only used it as an excuse to stay away so that I wouldn't be dragged into another pointless war." Leaning back in his chair, Raven takes a calming breath, reining in his still volatile temper before he says or does something he knows he'll regret. "We can't undo what has already happened," he admits softly. "I'll take Naruto in and raise him as I know his parents would have wished." "Are you sure?" the Hokage asks with a warm smile, although he already knows the answer. "Hi," Raven replies as he stands to leave. "Please have Minato's personal belongings moved from storage and sent to my home in the morning." An hour later, Raven finally walks through the front door of the small house that he now shares with Naruto. As he looks around at the sparsely furnished living room, he can't help the grin that crosses his lips at how nothing has changed in the nearly 6 years since he last stood in the room. Making his way towards the stairs leading to the bedrooms, he stops at the bottom step, feeling another presence in the room. "Thanks for your assistance, Kakashi," he tells the man without looking for him. "I can take it from here." The faint click of a closing window lets him know that his guest has left before he continues on his way up to his room. He stops to peek in on a sleeping Naruto and smiles as he notices how peaceful the boy seems. "Tomorrow we'll start getting to know each other and get you settled in," he says softly. "After that we'll begin your training and education, and by the time I'm finished with you, you will be the greatest shinobi this world has ever seen." Assuming he can reach the same arrangement with Kyuubi that you have with me, a deep haunting voice whispers in the back of his mind. The sun is already peeking through the curtains of the room by the time Naruto wakes up from the best night's sleep he can ever remember having in his admittedly short life. The seductive smells drifting up to his room from the kitchen caused his mouth to water as he slides from under the covers and slowly makes his way down the stairs. The nice man said that his friend would be taking care of me from now on, he remembers as he reaches the bottom of the steps. Naruto remembers the dog-masked Anbu from the nearly countless times the man has saved his life over the years and has grown to trust him the same way he trusts the Hokage and the nice people that run the ramen stand. They always make sure I had at least one meal a day, he smiles to himself, even if it is only 3 bowls. As he enters the room he sees the strange man that saved him from the mob last night. The man smiles at him as he slides a plate of food towards an empty chair before signaling Naruto to take a seat. The young boy holds his teddy tightly as he slowly approaches the seat and then climbs up to get a better look at the food. Raven grins as he sees the boy pick up the fork and almost instantly begin devouring the bacon, eggs, hash browns and toast before chugging the milk. The boy takes less than a minute to consume the entire meal before holding up his plate and asking for more. I remember when you used to eat like that, the voice in his head says. What do you mean used to? Raven replies mentally as he collects the plate and glass before walking over to the counter to replace the food. I still do, he thinks, just not in public. True, the voice concedes, he looks so much like his father. The voice comments as it watches the boy through Raven's eyes scarf down yet another helping of the meal. But he seems to have his mother's table manners, it groans as the boy lets out a loud burp. Raven mentally chuckles at the voice's annoyance as he clears the table, placing the dishes in the sink before returning to his seat across from the boy to begin the talk he knew they had to have. I already know who you are, Naruto-kun, he tells the boy, but I should probably tell you who I am. My name is Raven Sarutobi and like you I too was an orphan. The man's voice is kind and gentle as he speaks to Naruto and he can't help but smile at the man that calls himself Raven. What he likes even more is the fact that Raven was also an orphan like himself. Am I going to be living here like the nice man said, Raven-san? He asks, his eyes shimmering with hope. Hi, Raven answers with a smile as Naruto leaps out of his chair and runs across the table to hug him. With reflexes born from his years as a shinobi, Raven catches the boy easily and returns the hug warmly. But please call me Raven, he tells the boy. Raven-sama is way too formal for my tastes. Hi Raven-Nissan, Naruto says still clinging tightly to the man. Nissan works, Raven chuckles as the voice in his head grumbles. Walking down the streets of Konoha on their way to the shopping district to buy the things that Naruto would need, their first stop is to get the young boy some new clothes. As they enter the store, the shop owner immediately glares at them. I do not allow demon brats in my store, the man tells them. Leave now before I call the Anbu to remove you both. What is it with people and their insistence that you are my kid? Raven asks Naruto. I mean sure okay I'm kind of adopting you, but what does that have to do with calling you my offspring? Naruto looks at him as if he's grown a second head before shrugging. Turning back to the shop owner, Raven stares into the man's eyes as his own normally onyx eyes shift to the green slitted reptilian eyes. I may be known as the demon of Konoha to my enemies, but in this village I'm called Raven Sarutobi. My ward and I would like to buy some clothes, but if that is too much of a problem for you we will take our business elsewhere. No problem Sarutobi-sama, the man stutters, please take your time and let me know if you need any help. Unfortunately this very same scene plays out in nearly every store they visit until they finally decide to stop for lunch just after noon. Nevertheless they still manage to purchase Naruto several children's books, toys and clothing, as well as restock the cupboards and pantries with enough food to last even them for a week or two, longer if they eat out at least twice a week. After lunch they make their way towards the shinobi supply shop talking as they go. Starting tomorrow we'll begin your training, Raven informs Naruto. Training? Naruto asks, training for what? To be a shinobi of course, Raven answers, causing the boy's eyes to light up. You mean like the nice man and the Hokage? Naruto asks. Hi, Raven tells him as they enter the shop. Unlike the other shops they visited that day, the owner doesn't try and chase them away. Instead the man walks over to Raven and extends his hand. Welcome back Raven-san, the man greets him. It's been a long time. Hi, Raven replies, shaking the hand. It's good to see you, old friend. And you too, the man replies. Looking over Raven's shoulder he smiles at Naruto before stepping in front of the boy and squatting down to the child's level. I'm Ryo and you are? He asks the boy. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, sir, Naruto answers the man. Well, Naruto Uzumaki, welcome to my shop. He smiles before standing back up so he can turn around and look at Raven once again. Resupplying or arming the kid? He asks. Both actually, Raven answers. I'm going to start his training tomorrow, so we'll also need training gear along with a full set of ninja equipment. Standard shinobi equipment or standard Raven equipment? Ryo asks with a chuckle. Do you even need to ask? Raven replies with a chuckle of his own. Same old Raven, Ryo answers as he heads towards the back. A few minutes later he returns with a box and sets it on the counter. The weapons and other gear I already had waiting, he informs his friend. The clothes will take a while to make since I'll need his measurements before I can begin. Not a problem. Raven smiles as he hands Ryo a slip of paper before reaching for his wallet. No charge, Ryo tells him before Raven can start taking the money out. Consider them late birthday presents. Raven nods as he puts the wallet away, knowing that the man is referring to Naruto and not him. Alright, but I'm still paying for the clothes, he tells Ryo. Only if you let Naruto come over to play with Tenten. Ryo laughs. Tenten? Raven asks, confused for a moment before realization dawns on him. So it was a girl? He asks, excited for the man. Hi, Ryo answers, beaming with fatherly pride. She's a hell of a shot too, just like her mother. Speaking of her mother, Raven says, how is Suka? I haven't seen her since you guys announced you were expecting. She's fine, Ryo answers. She and Tenten are out visiting her folks right now, but they should be back soon if you want to hang around. I'd love to, Raven tells him, but I need to get this stuff home and start on Naruto's education before dinner. Alright, Ryo says understandingly. How about you two join us tonight? I know Suka will love to see you again, and I'm sure the Naruto and Tenten will get along just fine. We'll be there, Raven tells his friend before picking up the box and signaling for Naruto to get the door. See you tonight then. Raven and Naruto returned to Ryo's shop later that day in time for dinner as promised. Ryo, like most of the other shop owners in Konoha, lives above the shop with his family. As soon as Raven walks through the door, he finds himself nearly tackled by a short brunette wearing a traditional-style Chinese sleeveless blue shirt and green pants. Raven-kun, the woman says, trying to squeeze him tighter only to find his clothing and armor prevented her from doing so. Where have you been, Suka-chan? Raven laughs as he returns the hug gently so as not to harm the smaller woman. Here and there, he tells her, mostly training and sightseeing, with a little bounty hunting on the side. Same old Raven-kun, Suka nearly giggles as she lets him go before walking over to Naruto. And this must be Naruto-kun, she says as she leans down to look at the boy. Listen to Raven-kun and you'll be an even greater shinobi than him someday. I'm going to be the greatest shinobi the world has ever known, Naruto beams, Raven-san said so. I believe it, she smiles, ruffling the boy's hair a little. Come on and I'll introduce you to Tenten. You'll like her. Raven watches as Suka and Naruto go into the dining room. He can't help the tinge of guilt that grips him as he wonders what the boy's parents might think about his delayed return. He is pulled from his musings by the delighted squeals coming from the other room and grins at the smells just now reaching his nose. As Raven finishes tucking Naruto into bed, he heads downstairs and opens the back door and grins at the Anbu standing before him wearing a dog mask. Evening Kakashi, he says, what can I do for you? The council wishes to speak to you about Naruto, Kakashi tells him. You are to report to them at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Raven sighs as he nods, I'll be there. Kakashi simply nods before vanishing in a poof of smoke. So it begins, the voice in his head says, we both knew this was coming. Hi, Raven thinks, still I thought we'd have a little more time. Nothing we can do about it now, the voice tells him. Get some sleep and we'll deal with them in the morning while Naruto's training. Raven just nods mentally before following the voice's advice and going to bed. The sun wasn't even up when Raven walks silently into Naruto's room and picks the still sleeping boy up and gently cradles him in his arms before walking downstairs and out the back door. Time to start your training, Naruto-kun. In the center of the backyard, or the training field that serves as the backyard, is a small pond roughly 10 foot in diameter and about 7 foot deep. Raven walks over towards the water's edge before focusing chakra into his feet. He then proceeds to walk to the very center of the pond, where the water is the deepest, and drops Naruto. Less than 3 seconds after the small boy's body breaks the surface of the icy cold water, his head pops up as he lets out an ear-splitting screech that somehow manages to wake up the entire village. Raven pays the boy's ungodly volume no attention as he grabs the back of Naruto's shirt before the boy is able to fall below the surface again. "Now that you're up, we can begin." Begin? Begin what?" the soaked child stutters through chattering teeth. Raven carries the shivering boy towards the shore as he answers. "Your training, of course," Raven answers. "And the first lesson you just learned is a shinobi must never lets guard down, even when sleeping." But you never said anything about trying to drown me," Naruto stammers as Raven hands him a set of dry training clothes. "I didn't want to ruin the surprise," Raven grins. "Listen Naruto, I told you that this training would be intense and that there would be plenty of times you may hate me for doing this to you," he tells the young boy while kneeling before him. "But these lessons are necessary if you are to become the greatest shinobi ever." Seeing the boy's face go from one of sadness to a look of determination causes Raven to grin. "Now that I've got your full attention, I can tell you the training regiment you're going to follow until I say otherwise. First of all, we will begin physical training at 5 a.m. every day. This portion of the training will focus on increasing your strength, speed and stamina and will continue until noon. You will have half an hour for lunch before we continue on to your reading and writing lessons, which will last until dinner time when you get another half hour to eat and relax. After that we will begin your etiquette and cultural lessons until bedtime." "Physical and reading I can understand," Naruto says as he finishes dressing. "But what are etiquette and cultural lessons?" "Etiquette and cultural," Raven corrects the boy with a smile. "Basically they teach you manners and how act in polite company. These skills are very important to a shinobi on deep cover and diplomatic assignments." Naruto nods his understanding as Raven reaches into his coat and pulls out a scroll. "Now I've got a few errands to run, but I'll be back in time for lunch and to start on your lessons," he tells Naruto as he unrolls the scroll on the ground. Raven bites his thumb, causing it to bleed before smearing the blood across the writing on the scroll. "Some of my friends will look after you until I return," he tells the wide-eyed boy as he performs several rapid hand seals before slapping his hand down on the scroll. There is suddenly a large poof of smoke, and as the smoke begins to clear, 36 dragons of varying size and color suddenly appear between a now slack-jawed Naruto and a still calm Raven. Koga, come forward," Raven says as he puts the now re-rolled scroll away. A small black dragons roughly the size of a large horse steps forward and sit in front of Raven awaiting instructions while a tiny green dragonette lands on the dragon's head. "Hoga," Raven says addressing the dragonette, "Naruto is to run 5 laps the field then rest for 10 minutes before doing 20 sit-ups and 20 push-ups. After that he can take another 10-minute break before repeating the process over again. You will keep pace and time for him," Raven says as the dragonette nods. "If I'm not back by noon, take him back to the house and wait for me there." Again the tiny creature nods before flying over to sit on the head of a slightly scared Naruto. "Koga," Raven says addressing the dragon. "You're in charge until I return," he tells the animal as it nods in understanding. "You and the others are to guard Naruto with your lives, and if anyone tries to harm the boy you are to execute them immediately and send Shunta to notify me." The dragon once again nods before turning around to face the others. They all nod in unison before quickly flying in various directions to patrol the area, leaving Koga and a small blue dragonette to lie down in the field watching Hoga and Naruto. Raven looks at Naruto and offers the boy a warm smile. "Don't worry Naruto," he says in a friendly voice, "they won't let anything happen to you, I promise." Raven looks up and notices the position of the now higher sun before looking back at the boy. "I've got to go no, but I'll be back as soon as I can." With that he takes off down the path leading from the training field towards the village. "Raven-sama said for you to run," Hoga says, shocking the poor boy. Naruto is so shocked by the fact that the tiny creature can speak that he doesn't even notice the squeaky voice it uses. "You run," the dragonette tells Naruto before snapping at the boy's bottom, causing him to run as fast as he can around the pond with Hoga hot on his heels. Every time Naruto starts to slow down, Hoga snaps at his butt again, causing the boy to pick the pace back up. This scene causes the two watching to laugh in voices that are clearly not human. Raven pushes open the large double doors to the council chamber with enough force to cause them to nearly fly open as he stares across the room from the hallway. The almost thunderous boom caused by the thick wooden doors hitting the opposing walls at the exact same moment causes everyone in the room, including the Hokage, to jump at least 3 inches out of their chairs before eyes filled with anger, annoyance, and even amusement fall upon the man that just now begins to enter the room, giving off an aura for confidence and power that not only captures their attention but prevents even the most hardened of those in attendance from looking away. "Look at the way they both admire and fear you," the voice tells him. "It's like an elixir," he comments. "There is no denying how addictively intoxicating the sweet, seductive taste of true terror is." "Control yourself," Raven orders the voice. "Don't forget that it was your addiction that got you in this mess in the first place." The voice does not answer, nor does it really need to. Raven allows the matter to drop as he reaches the center of the large semicircle of tables behind which the entire council is now seated. He allows his eyes to wander from one end of the table to the other as he discerns just how many allies and enemies he has on the council, comprised of both civilian and shinobi representatives. The council is made up of prominent merchants, clan heads, and ranking shinobi, along with the Hokage and his former teammates, now his most trusted advisors. Following his initial scan of the room, Raven now knows that he is possibly in for a fight, whether he wants one or not. Shibi, Shuza, Sume, Shikaku, Inoichi, Heishi, and Atusan will support me, he thinks to himself after running his mental tally. Kaharu and Homura could go either way, just like Fugaku. And of course Danzo would love to have a Jinchuriki as a weapon under his control. "Kami, I hate politics, but we're so good at it." The voice almost purrs inside his mind before chuckling at its own joke. "Neither the Uchiha nor the old man's advisors will be a problem," the voice tells him. "Unless I miss my guess, they'll more than likely abstain from the vote. Your biggest problems are going to come from the civilians and Danzo, who could try getting the shinobi that still harbor old grudges on their side. Not to mention the Bakas that will probably blame me for not being here to help when Kyuubi attacked," Raven adds. "As fucked up as it seems, you know there will be those that will try and twist this around and blame me for Minato's death by saying I should have been here to fight the Kyuubi myself instead of allowing him and so many other to die. Of course the more sadistic of them will try saying that I plan on releasing the Kyuubi so that we could destroy the village and take over the world." Raven growls mentally while maintaining a mask of indifference that would make both the Uchihas and Hyugas jealous. In fact, it was doing just that as the head of the Uchiha clan almost glares at him. "Why have I been summoned?" Raven inquires. Crossing his arms over his chest, he tenses specific muscles in his body while using chakra to stick to the floor, giving off the illusion of leaning against an invisible wall. The Hokage takes a puff of his pipe before addressing the man he and his wife raised as a son. "You're here to discuss your adoption of Naruto Uzumaki." Raven looks to the only father he has ever really known with a raised eyebrow. "Tell me, Atusan, since when does a simple adoption require the approval of the council? Honestly, one would think that the members of this council would have better things to do than to concern themselves with something as trivial as a simple adoption. You will show this council the proper respect or we'll have you arrested," one of the civilian merchants tells him. "You have no idea what kind of monster that boy is." Before the man could utter another word against Naruto, he finds himself pinned against the wall behind him by this throat as his feet dangle off the ground. All eyes in the room were once again upon Raven as he holds the man up with his left hand. "You will hold your tongue or lose it, sir," he warns the man before dropping him to the ground. Standing over the now cowering man, he addresses the others, never once taking his eyes off the man trembling at his feet. "You call the boy a monster and a demon," he snarls. "You have no idea what a real monster is nor what a true demon is." Closing his eyes, Raven takes a calming breath as he moves back towards his spot in front of the council, allowing the man's friends to help him back to his seat. "For your information, sir," he says, "I am no stranger. My name is Raven Sarutobi, and during the last Great Shinobi War I was known as Konoha no Akuma, the Demon of the Leaf. And like Naruto-kun, I too am a Jinchuriki." The resulting uproar from the civilians on the council at Raven's identity is almost deafening, and it takes the Hokage several minutes to restore order to the meeting. Once things have settled back down, Raven continues. "I grew up the exact same way Naruto did," he tells them, closing his eyes as he tells his story. I was hated and beaten by the village I was born to before being cast out into the streets by the very people that had cursed me to this existence. He can hear and almost feel the shock and dismay his words cause in those that had not known the full story of his origins. When I was only 5 years old, the elders of my village ordered my assassination, and if it hadn't been for a Tucson finding me in the forest that night, I wouldn't be alive now. He took me in and gave me a home, but more than that, he gave me a family that truly loved me and didn't fear what their neighbors or the council thought. Growing up in the Sarutobi household, I learned many things, the most important being the wool of fire, and how it connects every person in this village to each other. Raven maintains his mask as he mentally smiles at the silent contemplation his carefully chosen words have caused nearly every member of the council. I became a Konoha shinobi and dedicated my life not only to the protection of this village but to the safety of her people. It was during the last great shinobi war my secret was revealed, and this very council tried to do to me what my first village had done. He growls, causing many in the room to retreat as far from him as their chairs would allow. I fought, bled and nearly died protecting my friends, comrades in this village from enemy shinobi, and the thanks I got were 3 teams of Enbu ordered to kill me. His eyes suddenly snap open, revealing green reptilian slitted eyes as he looks around the table, holding the gazes of those that would cause Naruto harm for a few moments before moving on to the next. I was enraged at the betrayal this village had shown me and would have gladly torn the council to shreds along with the Anbu sent to carry out their orders if it hadn't been for a Tucson and my friends. They are the ones that held me in check, not the Hatibi no Tatsu, the 8-tailed dragon. Hell, Hatibi can care less what happens in the world so long as it survives. You're laying it on a little thick, Hatibi warns, although the eyes were a nice touch. Raven doesn't reply as he closes his eyes again. Taking another breath, he gives the illusion of calming his nerves and allowing his anger to subside when in actuality he was waiting for the perfect moment to play his trump card. I apologize for losing my temper at Tucson, Raven says as he opens his normal onyx eyes to meet the Hokage's warm smile. I will not allow this council to do to Naruto what was done to me. Answer me, Sarutobi-san, Heishi says, attempting to restore order to the meeting. What are your intentions for the boy? I will raise Naruto as my son the way his mother wished for me to, Raven answers honestly, causing yet another uproar. I will prepare him for the academy and continue to care for and train him until the time when he is able to care for himself. And what of the Kyuubi? Heishi asks, what will you teach the boy in regards to the demon? If is possible, I will teach him how to harness its power without losing himself to the Biju, Raven says. If that is not possible, then I will teach him how to contain the fox so that it cannot harm anyone ever again. Heishi nods at Raven's answers before looking to the rest of the council. The Hyuga clan has no objections to the boy's adoption. No objections? One of the council members yells, weren't you listening? He just said he's going to teach the boy how to free the demon. Heishi glares at the man with his opal eyes as his faces convey only the slightest hint of anger, which for a Hyuga is paramount to anger. I heard every word he said clearly. He will teach the boy to either be like himself or to completely seal the Kyuubi away for good. Heishi's right, Inoichi says. Raven-san's service record speaks for itself, and since he's also a Jinchuriki like Naruto, who better to care for the boy than another Jinchuriki? To my knowledge, Raven has over 20 years of experience controlling his Biju. I can't think of anyone more qualified to raise the boy. This is outrageous, one of the civilians almost shouts. You expect us to just allow this freak to just waltz into our village and train the demon brat? Have you gone insane? He should be arrested and the both of them executed. I'd love to see you try. Sume Inuzuka laughs. There isn't a shinobi alive that could kill Raven-san. The former Kunoichi tells the civilians, not even a cage. She is correct, Shibi Aburame adds. During the war it was Raven-sama who single-handedly destroyed the village Kakaugan in a single night. Everyone in the room remembers hearing about that incident. Kakaugan, granted, was Earth Country's second largest shinobi village next to Iwa until the entire village was wiped out by an unknown invasion force that completely eradicated every shinobi in the village in a single night, leaving only the civilians alive. Over 2,000 shinobi and kunoichi ranging from Anbu to Genin were killed in one night, and no one ever knew who was responsible until now. Raven remembered that night as well, although much differently than everyone else. It was his first and only SSS ranked off the book's mission, and while it had been a major turning point in the war, it had left him completely weak and helpless for almost 2 months afterwards. The only reason that Shibi even knew about the mission was due to the fact that Raven had been forced to seek refuge at the Aburame compound until he was strong enough to protect himself. As troublesome as this all is, Shikaku sighs, "Can we please get back to the matter at hand?" "Of course, Nara-san," Raven replies to his lazy friend's request. Resuming his previous leaning, he reaches into his coat and pulls out a scroll. He tosses it to the Hokage with a smirk. "This was delivered to me last night," he tells the council, although he fails to mention just how it was delivered. "It is the last will and testament of Naruto's mother, and it names me as his legal guardian." The Hokage smiles as he unrolls the document before retrieving his reading glasses from inside his robes. Once his glasses are in place, he begins to read the document aloud to the council. "The last will and testament of Kushina Uzumaki. I, Kushina Uzumaki, being of sound mind and expanding body, I'm 7 months pregnant, do hereby leave all of my worldly possessions to my as yet unborn son Naruto Uzumaki in the event of my death. Should his father no longer be among live at the time of my death, then I entrust the care and safety of our son to Raven Sarutobi upon his return to Konoha. Should Raven-kun be unable to fulfill this obligation, then this duty shall fall to Kakashi Hitaki, who if also is unable to comply with this request shall pass the well-being of my child to whomever the Hokage deems worthy. Signed, Kushina Uzumaki. Witnessed by Kakashi Hitaki, Jiraiya of the Sannin, Asuma Sarutobi. Notarized by Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage." "That document is obviously a forgery," one of the council nearly yells. "Who is this Kushina Uzumaki, and how come we've never heard of her before, and who is the boy's father, and why hasn't he come forward to claim his brat?" "This document is not a forgery," the Hokage replies. "I remember discussing it with her the day Kushina decided to write her will. As to who she is, she was a chunin from the former Whirlpool country that came to Konoha following its destruction during the last great shinobi war. Sadly, she passed away shortly after giving birth to Naruto. As for the boy's father, he unfortunately perished while battling Kyuubi. His will has not yet been discovered." "That settles the matter then," Shibi Aburame says as he begins to rise from his chair. The boy's mother clearly named Raven-san as his legal guardian. As the document has been authenticated, this council no longer has any say in the matter. As he moves to leave, the Hokage adjourns the meeting, declaring Raven Naruto's legal guardian in accordance with Kushina's will, much to the disappointment of the opposition and the delight of the supporters. After everyone else has left the room, Sarutobi looks at Raven with a proud smile. "You know, you could have just shown her will in the beginning and saved yourself all the trouble of the hearing," he tells his adopted son. "Now where's the fun in that, Tucson?" Raven asks, grinning like the cat that ate the canary. "Some things will never change." The Hokage laughs as they walk out of the council chamber together. It was the first weekend after Raven had begun Naruto's training, and an excited Naruto was bouncing around the house much to R. It was the first weekend after Raven had begun Naruto's training, and an excited Naruto was bouncing around the house much to Raven's amusement. Raven had told Naruto that he had some friends coming over and that they were bringing their children with them. Naruto was overjoyed at the thought of playing with children his own age, and even more so when he learned that 1010 would be coming as well. Raven spent most of the morning preparing snacks and food for their guests, and when Naruto asked him why he was making so much food, Raven laughed. "You've never seen an Akamichi eat," he chuckled. "Word of advice, never get between an Akamichi and a free meal. It's bad for your health." Around noon their guests began to arrive, and Raven had to keep from laughing at how much Naruto's face lit up when he saw the shy little girl hiding behind her father. Even the ever-stoic Hiyashi Hyuga had a small smirk as he watched the blonde bundle of energy grab his daughter's hand and literally drag the blushing girl towards the backyard so the two could play. "He's defiantly his mother's son," the Hyuga leader commented as he enters the home of his childhood friend. "That he is," Raven replies as they make their way towards the backyard to watch the children. "It has been a while, Hiyashi," Raven tells the other man. "That it has," the Hyuga answers. "The village hasn't been the same without you. You know why I left," Raven says as he offers Hiyashi a drink. "You shouldn't dwell on the past so much," Hiyashi replies, accepting the refreshment. "They would have wanted you to move on." Hi, Raven answers before taking a sip of his own drink, and I have for the most part. I'll always miss them, but at least they're in a better place. Both men laugh as a scared Hinata lets out a scream of terror when Naruto sets her on the back of a small, green dragon before hopping on its back behind her. He's going to be a heartbreaker like his father, Hiyashi comments with a smile as the dragon begins walking around the backyard, giving the now laughing children a pony ride. It's good that someone finally took the boy in, the head of the Hyuga clan tells the former shinobi. We all wanted to adopt him, but none of us could agree who would have been the best choice to raise Minato's son. A Tucson told me, Raven says with a hint of bitterness in his voice that does not go unnoticed by his longtime friend. I still can't believe that none of you told me he even existed. And what would you have done if we had? Hiyashi inquires with a raised brow. Exactly what I'm doing now, Raven answers without a second thought. I would have come back immediately and taken him in. And Hachibi, his friend asks, could you have mastered your control over the demon if you had come back sooner? You should know better than anyone that I don't control Hachibi, Raven tells his childhood friend, but we finally came to an understanding. Hiyashi can only nod his head, knowing what his friend was talking about. Hiyashi as well as the others in their closely knit circle remember the hours spent by Raven's bedside after each of his failed suicide attempts over the years. While they each hated the fact that he had regularly attempted to end his life, they understood his reasons. They knew that Raven cared enough about them and Konoha to kill himself rather than to allow Hachibi to seize control over his body and endanger those he had sworn to protect. How long has it been since he finally stopped? The Hyuga leader asks. His last actual attempt was roughly 5 years ago, Raven confesses, but it's only a matter of time before he tries again. Little by little the others begin to arrive until only one of Raven's still living friends is absent from their reunion. A knock at the door gets his attention and Raven gets up from the couch to answer and can't fight back the smile that almost completely covers his face at the sight of a raven-haired woman accompanied by 2 raven-haired boys. Makoto-chan. Raven calls out before scooping the woman up into his arms for a hug while spinning her around like he did when they were younger. Raven Nissan, Makoto smiles as she returns their first embrace in nearly 6 years. Kami, I've missed you. Raven-san, the older of the 2 boys says, gaining the adult's attention, please put Okazen down so we can join the others. Gomen Itachi-kun, Raven chuckles as he sets Makoto down before turning to look her children. You've grown up, he comments seeing the 13-year-old Uchiha prodigy standing before him. I hear congratulations are in order, he grins ruffling the boy's hair, youngest Anbu captain ever from what a Tucson tells me. That is correct, Itachi replies mechanically, causing Raven to shake his head. Seems someone's forgotten his sensei's lessons while I've been away, Raven comments with an evil smirk. Looks like I'll have to give you a refresher course in how to have fun. You wouldn't, Itachi asks as he begins to slowly step away from the still smirking man. I don't know who you are, the younger boy says, stepping between Raven and Itachi, but I won't allow you to hurt my Nissan. Sasuke-kun, Makoto says to the younger boy, Raven Nissan would never hurt Itachi-kun. He's only picking on him. Aren't you Raven Nissan? She asks, elbowing Raven in the ribs. Hi, Raven laughs before guiding them inside. Come on, the others are waiting for us. Raven directs the Itachi and Sasuke to the backyard where the other children were playing and ordered Itachi to have fun or else he'd make good on his earlier threat. As the children played outside, the adults sat around the living room reminiscing about old times as well as catching up on current events. I still can't get over how much Naruto reminds me of his parents, Makoto comments from her seat on the couch beside Raven. Although none of them were ever told about Naruto's lineage, they all knew Minato and Kushina well enough to know without a doubt whose son Naruto was. I just can't believe I never say it sooner, Sume tells them sadly as he looks down into her glass as if hoping to find forgiveness in its contents. Very few of us did, Inoichi replies, his voice betraying the guilt he feels at allowing his friend's child to grow up alone for these past 4 years. And what difference would it have made if we had known? Shikaku asks his teammate, what could any of us have done then that we can't do now? We could have taken him and raised him as one of our own. Sume nearly snarls at the lazy genius of their group. And who would you suggest take care of him? The Nara asks the Inuzuka, although it was Shibi who answers. Shika-kun is correct, the Aburame leader tells them. While any one of us would have gladly taken him in and raised him as if he were our own child, the fact remains that he would have known he didn't belong to any of our clans. His simple is met with reluctant nods and agreements. So looks like I'm stuck raising the brat, Raven grumbles good-naturedly, figures. Minato makes a mess and I'm stuck cleaning up after him. Kami, even in death he's still as irresponsible as a freaking genin. You know you still love the baka, Makoto giggles nudging him. She is rewarded with a smile as he wraps his arm around her shoulder to pull her into a one-armed hug. At least I've still got your help, he grins, right Makoto-chan? Of course Raven-Nissan, the Uchiha matriarch replies, it'll be just like when we were genin under Ero-sensei. Overall the remainder of the first year was rather uneventful. Every weekday Raven would wake Naruto up an hour before dawn to begin his morning exercises, which would always increase each week until by the end of the first year Naruto was running 5 laps around Konoha before breakfast, followed by 300 sit-ups, 300 push-ups, 400 jumping jacks, 500 squat thrusts, 1000 punches, 500 with each hand, and 1000 kicks, 500 with each leg. The remainder of his training consisted of mathematics, history, both Konoha's as well as the entire shinobi nation as a whole, etiquette and culture, including literature, music and theater. On weekends Raven would allow Naruto to visit with his friends either at their home or one of the clan compounds. During this first year Naruto had grown closer to his new circle of friends and found that he had as much fun with them individually as he did with them as a whole. Choji and Naruto had become fast friends over food and would often comment and critique various foods that ate as well as the restaurants they ate at. Shikamaru could always challenge Naruto intellectually and they would often spend hours playing shogi and go. At Fist Shikamaru had a large lead over Naruto, but as the year progressed, Naruto managed to close the gap until they ended up exchanging leads in their little rivalry. In Kiba Naruto found a kindred spirit that was just as loud and energetic as he was, as well as a partner in crime. Over the course of that first year Naruto and Kiba were responsible for no fewer than 36 pranks involving civilians and shinobi that would either badmouth the duo themselves or someone the duo cared about. While Sume would constantly attempt to discipline Kiba, Raven would only make Naruto run extra laps every time he was caught. The end result was a vast improvement in both boys' stealth as well as regular tracking practice for the Inuzuka and Hyugas. Also during that same year Naruto had grown remarkably close to the Uchihas to the point that both Sasuke and Itachi had begun to view Naruto as their younger brother. Naruto of course began to refer to them as his Nissans even in public. Naruto's relationships with Shino and Hinata were perhaps the most unusual out of all of his other relationships, considering the difficulty involved with getting both of them to open up and actually join in on a conversation. Hinata's inherent shyness along with Shino's reserved nature made normal communications extremely difficult, and in the end Naruto was forced to devise means of working around each of his friends' unique quirks. For Shino this involved learning to read the Aburame heir's body language, and for the Hyuga heiress he simply had to be patient and allow her to warm up to the conversation before gently guiding her towards participating. Naruto's relationship with Ino proved to be a source of much amusement between the adults, as the young blonde girl took great enjoyment in bossing her fellow blonde around and being the nice guy that he was. Naruto often found it easier to allow her to have her way rather than to fight with her. Of course this led to almost continual teasing from their friends about them being a couple, and while both adamantly denied it, Ino continued to boss Naruto around and he continued to let her. The following year saw a drastic change in Naruto's training regiment, much to the blonde Jinchuriki's pleasure. For it was this year that Raven began teaching his ward how to mold, control and manipulate his chakra. Raven had begun out slowly, spending an entire week going over the basics of both molding chakra and chakra manipulation before he even allowed Naruto to attempt to mold chakra for the first time. After that Raven began to integrate chakra control exercises in with the rest of Naruto's established training regiment. The first chakra control exercise Naruto learned was sticking a leaf to his forehead using only chakra. It had taken him nearly a week to complete the task, and Raven had refused to teach him any others until he was satisfied that Naruto had the exercise completely mastered. As a result, Naruto spent the first 2 months of his 5th year sticking leaves to various parts of his body while going about his normal daily regimen before Raven finally considered the exercise mastered. After that, Raven had Naruto work on the leaf floating exercise for an additional 2 months. Being the taskmaster that Raven proved himself to be, he refused to consider the exercise mastered until Naruto could run 5 complete laps around Konoha covered in leaves floating less than an inch from his body, which took Naruto an additional 2 months to accomplish. After the leaf exercises were mastered to Raven's satisfaction, he then began to teach his blonde ward the basics of taijutsu as well as the tree walking exercise. Much to Naruto's pain and suffering, Raven decided to combine the two and forced Naruto to spar with him while leaping around in the trees. This lasted for more than 3 months, at which time Raven decided that Naruto was ready for the water walking exercise. Again, this proved to be almost pure torture for the young Jinchuriki, as his guardian and sensei would again force him into sparring matches while trying to remain above water, and by the end of his 4th month of these exercises, Naruto was about ready to forego becoming a shinobi and just let the villagers have their way with him, reasoning that it would be far less painful. After 11 months of intense chakra control exercises combined with 7 months of bizarre taijutsu training, Raven added a new element to Naruto's already strenuous training regimen: kunai balancing. Now ordinarily this wouldn't be so bad, except that Raven would force Naruto to do this while performing his push-ups on the tips of kunais stuck into the ground. By the time Naruto's 6th birthday rolled around, the young blonde was now seriously reconsidering his decision to become a shinobi. Not trusting Raven, who he was now beginning to consider the devil, he turned to the only active shinobi he knew he could trust, Itachi. It was the weekend before his birthday, and Naruto was sitting on a dock overlooking one of the lakes in one of the Uchiha training grounds with the young Anbu captain beside him. "I don't know what to do, Itachi-Nisan," he confesses to his adopted older brother. "I don't know if I can take any more of Raven-sensei's training. Raven-san's methods are a tad extreme." Itachi agrees. "But can you really deny the results of his training?" "What do you mean?" Naruto asks. "I've seen your workouts," the Uchiha prodigy admits to his younger brother, "and while his standards are a tad high, I don't know of any other children your age that have even advanced past the leaf floating exercise," he tells the younger boy. "In all honesty, Naruto-kun, most shinobi don't even learn the tree walking and water walking until after they've become genin, and kunai balancing is a junin level exercise," he tells the now wide-eyed youth. "Especially when applied in the manner that Raven has you using it." "So you mean I'm even better than Sasuke-Nisan?" Naruto asks, almost bubbling with excitement. "Not quite," Itachi says, trying to rein the boy in carefully. "You've been focusing on more advanced forms of chakra control, this is true. But Sasuke has been focusing on his weapons as well as learning a couple of our clan's justice. Raven-sensei won't teach me any jutsus until I start the academy." Naruto sulks, crossing his arms over his chest. "That may be for the best," Itachi tells him, ruffling his blonde hair. "Given your larger than normal chakra reserves, it would make more sense to have you master your chakra control before progressing to ninjutsu and genjutsu. I guess," Naruto says before Makoto's voice calls them both in to have dinner. It has only been 2 years since Naruto came to live with Raven, and for the first time in a year Naruto was actually looking forward to training again. The reason for this was simple: for today Raven was beginning Naruto's weapons training. As an added bonus, Raven had invited Ten and her mother to join them. Naruto and Raven were standing in the training field when Ten and Suka arrive, and Naruto immediately rushes over and gives Ten a massive bear hug. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," he says to the slightly blushing girl over and over again. Raven can't help but laugh at his young ward's action. "Come on, the training hasn't been that bad. You've got to be kidding me," Naruto exclaims, letting the still blushing older girl go. "You've been trying to kill me for the last year," he tells them before looking up at Suka hopefully. "Please, Suka-chan," he almost pleads, "please don't let him kill me." The retired kunoichi can't help but laugh at the poor boy's pleas. "Don't worry, Naru-chan," she tells him, kneeling down to look him in the eyes. "I'll protect you from the big bad Raven-kun." "Yata!" Naruto cries out before giving the woman as tight a bear hug as he had given her daughter just moments before. True to her word, Suka protected Naruto from Raven, although neither had the heart to tell the young Jinchuriki that while Raven was very proficient with most known weapons, it was Suka that was the real weapons expert among their group. As such, Suka took over Naruto and Ten's weapons training for the remainder of the year until Ten joined the academy shortly after Naruto's 7th birthday. In that year Naruto developed his kunai and shuriken throwing to the point that he could hit any target he aimed at 9 times out of 10, even while on the move. Of course 10-10 beat him by being able to hit the targets 10 times out of 10. Also in that year both Naruto and 10-10 were introduced to various other weapons including senbons, knives, swords, staves, whips, chains, axes and clubs. By the time 10-10 was ready to enter the academy they had both gained a wealth of knowledge about almost every weapon they may encounter in their shinobi career as well as helped 10-10's father Ryo test out his newest shipments of weapons for his shop. Raven and 10-10's parents would always laugh whenever they children got a new shipment to play with, comparing it to the way children acted on Christmas morning. Once 10-10 entered the academy, Raven once again took over Naruto's training so that Suka could help her husband with their shop during the day and continued 10-10's weapons training after school at home. Naruto's last year of training saw his introduction to the wonders of traps and seals and with them the infinite possibilities for newer and better pranks for him and Kiba to pull. At least that was how the year was to begin, but during what was to be his first lesson into the fields of traps and seals turned into something that would forever change the young orphan's life. Whether this change was for the best or the worst was something that could not be known at the time. Now Naruto, Raven warns the blonde bundle of energy before the boy can get too far into his plans for more pranks. Remember when I told you I was a jack of all traits but a master of none? Naruto nods his head, remembering Raven telling him those exact words when they had begun his training 3 years ago. Well, that's especially true when it comes to traps and seals, he tells the young boy. Minato was our team's traps and seals expert. Now I did learn enough from him over the years to be competent enough with the few seals and traps I do use, but they're perhaps my weakest point when compared to the other things I do know. So if this Minato is such an expert, then why not have him teach me? Naruto asks, not realizing his mistake until he sees the pain and sadness in Raven's eyes. I wish I could, Naruto, Raven replies softly, I wish I could. Raven sits down on the ground and motions for Naruto to do the same. Naruto, the reason Minato can't teach you is because he died during the Kyuubi attack, he tells the boy. I'm sorry Nissan, I didn't know, Naruto says, realizing he had just dredged up painful memories for his guardian. What was he like? Again Naruto doesn't even realize what exactly it is he just asked, but the answer is far from what he accepted. Minato was a lot like you, Raven tells him with an almost sad smile. He had your same bright smile and your thirst for knowledge. He also had your same friendly nature and your kind heart. While you'll never know him, he would have been very proud of you, Naruto. Proud of me? Naruto asks, why would someone I'll never know be proud of me? Because he was your father, Raven answers plainly. Minato Namikaze was your father, Naruto. My father, Naruto asks, completely floored by the revelation. How can you know? How come no one ever told me? Surely Ojiji-san had to have known. How come he never told me? You have to understand, Naruto, your father had many enemies, Raven tells his best friend's son. Many of them are still alive and would love nothing more than to kill you for nothing more than because you are Minato's son. Raven takes a breath to steady himself before he continues the talk he had hoped to avoid until Naruto was at least in his teens. Your father was a great man, Naruto, never for a moment forget that, he says to the blonde boy. But even the greatest of men are still only human and as such are capable of making mistakes. The reason I'm telling you this is because 7 years ago your father made the greatest mistake of all in order to protect this village. Seeing Naruto's confusion, he continues to elaborate. 7 years ago during the Kyuubi attack, Minato knew he could never actually kill the Kyuubi, so he did the only thing he could, and that was to seal the demon into a newborn child, you. Me? Naruto asks as realization of the sheer magnitude of Raven's words suddenly hits him. You mean my father was the one who made me a demon? No, Raven nearly shouts. You are not the Kyuubi, Naruto, nor will you ever refer to yourself as that monster, you understand me? He demands. You are the demon's jailer and its container. You are not the demon itself, and don't you ever forget that. But why me? Naruto asks, why would my father seal the Kyuubi in me? Because Minato was not the kind of man to ask others to make a sacrifice that he himself was unwilling to make, Raven answers sadly. Minato knew he could never ask another parent to offer their child for the ritual, and as such he made the ultimate sacrifice for Konoha and gave both his life and yours to save this village. I think I understand, Naruto says after a few moments of silent thought. But why do you refer to my father's sacrifice as a mistake? Because the Baka never told me about his plan, Raven replies. You see Naruto, you and I are more alike than you realize, he tells Naruto. Where you contain the Kyuubi no Kitsune, I hold within me the Hachibi no Tatsu, the eight-tailed dragon. Hachibi number Tatsu, Naruto says, repeating the name of the demon dragon Raven contains. What does the Hachibi have to do with my father not telling you what he was going to do? I thought that was obvious, Raven replies with a slight chuckle. If Minato had told me before, and then I could have come back sooner and you might not have had to grow up the way you did before I finally did return, he adds with a twinge of regret. But you're here now, Naruto tells him with one of his foxy grins, and since you knew my father so well you can tell me everything about him. Hi, Raven replies as he stands up. But let's go inside so we can talk more comfortably, he suggests. The morning of Naruto's first day at the academy arrived and Raven was just finishing serving breakfast when the energetic blonde came bounding down the stairs. Morning Naruto-kun, he says as they both sit down to eat. Morning Raven Nissan, the boy replies before digging into his meal. So you remember our deal? Raven asks, watching the boy devouring the contents of his plate in mere moments. Yeah, Naruto replies, adding more food to his plate. I have to be good and not get into any trouble, he grumbles. This jutsu has better be worth it, he tells Raven, cause Kiba and I had a great prank planned today and he's going to be disappointed that we have to wait till tomorrow to pull it off. It'll be worth it, Raven chuckles, I promise. Raven knew about the boy's plan for using some of the seal and trap skills Naruto learned over the last year to pull off a major prank on their first day at the academy. In an attempt to teach Naruto a little restraint, he made a deal with Naruto to teach him his first jutsu after school if the blonde didn't get into any trouble today. Raven went so far as to inform Naruto that he would be picking the boy up after school and asking his teacher if he had behaved himself, and if the teacher said that he hadn't, then Naruto would have to wait until that weekend to learn the jutsu. You ready? Raven asks, putting the dishes into the sink as Naruto finishes clearing the rest of the table. A sulking Naruto sits in the back of the classroom waiting for his friends to come in and join him. The reason he was sulking was because as soon as he had arrived at the academy, the civilian parents had instantly started glaring at him. As Raven had left him alone, he had overheard a few of the mothers whispering about pulling their children from the academy if they ended up in his class. Hey Naruto, what gives? Kiba asks as he enters the room to find his pranking partner sulking. I thought we were supposed to be setting up. What happened? Raven Nissan says, I have to be good today or I won't get to learn my first jutsu until this weekend. Naruto pouts, crossing his arms over his chest while sulking even more. Man, that s, Kiba grumbles, plopping down in the chair on the right of the blonde. It had damn well better be a kick-ass jutsu, the Inuzuka adds. Raven Nissan says it is, but I think he's just saying that, Naruto replies. So, Kiba begins with a wicked grin, we do this tomorrow? Definitely, Naruto answers with a grin of his own. By the time Raven arrives to pick up Naruto, he finds the boy once again sulking in the back of the classroom. Why the long face? He asks, sitting beside his ward. I got in trouble for sleeping in class, the boy tells him. But I couldn't help it, he adds quickly. The class was so freaking boring and I already knew everything they were talking about. I mean, look at this. Naruto hands Raven a sheet of paper with the outline of everything that they are supposed to learn over the next 4 years. See, aside from first aid, wilderness survival and the jutsus, I already know everything, he tells his guardian, and they're not even teaching those until the 3rd year. Raven growls softly as he gets up and walks over to the front of the class to speak with Iruka. What is this? He asks, showing the outline to the Chunin. Is this what you're actually teaching at this academy? Is there a problem, sir? The younger shinobi asks. Damn straight there's a problem, Raven replies. This isn't a 4-year shinobi training regiment, he tells the confused academy instructor. Aside from the academics, this is a 2-week militia training course. Taking a deep breath, Raven tries to regain control of his emotions before continuing. Show me the obstacle course. Once outside, Raven gasps at the sight before him as he sees what in his opinion is little more than a playground. You have got to be shitting me, he says, still not believing how low the academy standards have fallen since his own school days. Where are the swinging punching bags? He asks. Where are the kunai and shuriken launchers? Sure, they were blunted, but they taught you to avoid enemy attacks. Shaking his head, he turns back to a now wide-eyed Iruka and a fearful Naruto. I want to see the person in charge of the Kunoichi training program, he tells the Chunin in a voice that leaves no room for arguments. Following his meeting with the academy instructors, a still agitated Raven paces the Hokage's office, still ranting about what he discovered less than an hour ago. I'm serious at Tucson, he says, completely ignoring the Hokage's amusement at his little tirade. They're not training shinobi, he tells the older man, they're training cannon fodder. Sweet Kami's nutsack, have you seen their curriculum? I have, the elder Sarutobi answers, and I still fail to see why you are so upset over it. Have you gone completely senile in your old age? Raven almost demands. Have you not even been paying attention to anything I've been telling you? The academy is a fucking joke. No wonder the other villages aren't taking us as seriously as they once did, he adds as he starts to build up more momentum as he continues his ranting. Hell, I wouldn't take us seriously if I knew about the kind of training the shinobi in this village receives before their Junin senseis take over. My god, no wonder the failure rate for the final Genin test is so high, he tells the now grinning Hokage, those kids never even learn how to work on a team. Even then, when they do manage to pass the damn test, their Junin senseis have to basically start their actual training from scratch. So when can I expect you to take over the academy? The Hokage chuckles. Raven's eyes nearly pop out of their sockets with his mouth hanging open as he looks at his father, causing the man to break out into full-scale laughter at the sight of his son's shocked face. If you feel so strongly about changing the academy's curriculum and raising the quality of the genin it produces, then surely you're willing to take over the academy and make the necessary changes, he tells the still speechless younger man. I'll have you staff informed about your appointment and you can meet then Friday after school, he adds with a triumphant smirk while leaning back in his chair. A still shell-shocked Raven makes his way home after his meeting with the Hokage as his mind tries to process what just happened. In the back of his mind he can feel Hachibi laughing at its container's misfortune. Friday quickly arrives and Raven is now standing in front of the academy's entire teaching staff, still trying to figure out what he's going to say to all of them. As he surveys the room, he's amazed by the fact, even though he doesn't look it, thanks to Hachibi's regenerative capabilities, he's actually older than everyone else in the room, even if it is only by a few years. First of all, I wish to thank everyone for taking time out of their busy schedules to attend today's meeting, he tells them. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Raven Sarutobi and I have been appointed by the Hokage to bring this academy's standards back up to snuff. What do you mean back up to snuff? A silver-haired Chunin demands. We're teaching these brats what they need to know to be shinobi, he says, causing several others to join in on his outburst. Why should we listen to some third-rate ninja newcomer who thinks he knows more than those of us who have been teaching at this academy for years, even if he is the Hokage's kid? First of all, Raven replies, maintaining an aura of confidence and authority. I am not a third-rate anything, he informs them. Unlike everyone else in this room, I have seen what's really out there, and nothing you are teaching these kids now can even hope to prepare them for what awaits them in the real world. Bullshit, the Chunin snaps, only to find himself hoisted in the air by his throat. His feet dangle almost half a foot off the ground as the killing intent radiating off of Raven prevents the other teachers in the room from intervening and assisting their fellow Chunin. Have you ever fought in a war? Raven snarls, baring his now enlarged canines. Because I have. How many nuke nins have you fought and killed in combat? Because for the 6 years I was gone from this village I collected the bounties on over 100 B and A ranked shinobi and 3 S ranks. Finally, who was on your genin team? Because I trained alongside the 4th Hokage himself under the legendary Sannin Jiraiya, he adds, causing murmurs to begin circulating throughout the room at his brief history. I may look young, he tells Mizuki, but I am older and more experienced than everyone else in this room. So you can either follow my new curriculum or you can resign and ask the Hokage to resume active duty. The choice is yours. Raven drops Mizuki on the floor before returning to the front. That goes for all of you, he says, turning back around to face them once again. The Hokage gave me a job to, and I intend to do it. You can stay on here at the academy and help me give these children a real education, or you can see the Hokage about finding another assignment. Does that include the Kyuubi brat as well? Mizuki snarls before finding himself pinned against the back wall of the room with the tip of a kunai pressed against his throat. You are dismissed, Toji-san, Raven snarls as his green slitted eyes blaze with an unholy fire. The Anbu will escort you to Ibiki and you can explain to him why you were referring to my ward as the Kyuubi, he tells the now terrified man. And if I ever see your sorry ass anywhere near Naruto-kun I will kill you. As two Anbu remove a still shaken and fuming Mizuki from the room, Raven turns his demonic gaze towards the rest of his staff. That goes for the rest of you, he tells them. As long as I'm in charge of this academy all students will be treated equally. No more favoritism and no more discrimination. No student in this academy will be treated any better or any worse than any other student. If you cannot follow this rule then you can leave now. Raven waits for a few moments before allowing his eyes to return to normal and smiles to himself when he sees that none of the remaining instructors move to leave. Good, now that that is out of the way we can get down to the real business of fixing the problems with the current curriculum, he says, leaning against the table at the front of the room. To begin with, we will no longer be teaching history to the first years, he tells them, receiving shocked gasps from several of the teachers. Instead, the lectures for first-year students will focus on chakra and jutsu theories as well as cryptography. At the beginning of each week, the students will be assigned certain chapters to read from their history books, and at the end of the week they will be given a written test covering the contents of those chapters as well as the contents of that week's lectures. Any student that fails that week's test will be assigned after-school tutoring to help them bring their grades up. They will also learn the leaf sticking and leaf floating chakra exercises. Second-year students will learn survival training, first aid, stealth and tracking, along with the Henge no Jutsu, the Kawarimi no Jutsu, the Bunshin no Jutsu and their practical applications, he informs them, receiving several nods and murmurs of agreement. Third-year students will be taught tree walking and water walking chakra exercises as well as genjutsu detection and dispelling training. Fourth-year students will begin teamwork exercises in the form of simulated missions. They will also receive weekly counseling sessions to prepare them for the mental stress of shinobi life. Also, during the fourth year I will evaluate each student's progress to determine if anyone demonstrates any special skill or aptitude that would warrant extra more specialized training, such as medical training that we do not offer here. Those students will be assigned to a special sensei for additional outside training. For the most part, none of the teachers had any objections to the new curriculum, and most could even see the benefits and logic behind implementing such changes. In addition to these changes, we will spend all 4 years building up the stamina, chakra control and chakra capacities of all the students so that their Junin senseis will not have to do this for us once they become genin. Also, the Academy Taijutsu as well as the Kunoichi program will both be receiving a complete overhaul, as both are completely ineffective. That's outrageous, the head of the Kunoichi program cries out. Is it? Raven asks. Tell me, what generally happens to a captured Kunoichi? Seeing the painful look in their eyes, he knows that Kunoichi in the room have either been captured themselves or, like the shinobi, knew a Kunoichi that has been captured. Exactly, he says before continuing. Our current program doesn't address the issue, he tells them. Nor does it address the issue of teenage hormones or the pain of loneliness on long missions that leads to numerous children being born out of wedlock. The look of understanding he sees in their eyes is enough for him as he continues. The Kunoichi program for the first through third year students will be suspended from now on, he informs them, since most of the girls in the academy aren't yet mature enough to understand what we need to teach them. The Kunoichi that still remain with us come their fourth year will be given courses in rape prevention, contraception and seduction, as well as counseling sessions and one-on-one meetings with active and retired Kunoichi to help better prepare them for the harsher realities of being a Kunoichi. I know some of my changes seem a bit extreme right now and will at times appear to be pretty harsh on the students, he tells them. It is intended to be for the purpose of weeding out those not serious about being shinobi or those that think being a shinobi is some kind of fun and exciting job. It is my intention for us to give those students that remain for the full 4 years the best chance we possibly can at actually surviving long enough in the real world to gain the experience required to become excellent shinobi and to also increase the quality of the shinobi this village produces. Any questions? Monday morning found Raven and the rest of the academy staff standing on the stage in the academy's auditorium waiting for the Monday morning finds Raven with the rest of the academy staff standing on the stage in the academy's auditorium waiting for their audience to finish assembling. Word was sent around to all the students and their parents about the impromptu meeting, and almost everyone is curious as to the reason behind it. Raven waits a few moments after everyone arrives before stepping forward and tapping the microphone a couple times to get their attention. First of all, let me thank everyone for taking the time out of their busy schedules to attend today's meeting, he tells them. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Raven Sarutobi and I have been assigned by the Hokage to come up with a new curriculum for the academy in order to improve the quality of Konoha's genins. A fairly loud murmur passes through the crowd as they listen to Raven's announcement, and while most of the civilians in the audience are confused as to what he means by improving the quality of Konoha's genins, the shinobi among them are curious as to exactly how he intends to go about making such improvements. Before I begin explaining my plans for improving the current curriculum, I wish to apologize to the 3rd and 4th year students who will be held back in order to receive the additional training they will need to meet the academy's new standards for graduation. The announcement immediately meets with loud cries of outrage from both the students being held back as well as their parents, both civilian and shinobi alike. Rather than attempting to shout down the enraged group, Raven simply waits for them to calm down before proceeding. I know many of you are upset with my decision, he begins once the screams subside enough for him to be heard without yelling himself hoarse. But I want every student in the academy to have the best possible chance of surviving out in the real world, he tells them. Under the current curriculum, those students would end up either repeating the academy anyways, dropping out of the shinobi program altogether, creating more work for their junin senseis, or else getting themselves and/or their teammates killed. Why should we listen to some no-name chunin? One of the outraged civilian parents demands. The current curriculum has served Konoha well for many years, and now you come along and tell us that our children aren't good enough. Just who the hell do you think you are? I already told you, Raven says, remaining eerily calm. My name is Raven Sarutobi and I am a junin, not a chunin. I am the adopted son of the current Hokage and was trained by the legendary Sannin Jiraiya alongside the former Hokage. These revelations have the desired effect of causing everyone in the room not already familiar with Raven's pedigree to gasp and look on him with awe. Kami, they're all a bunch of mindless sheep, Raven groans in his head. Has Konoha really fallen so far so quickly? As I was saying, he continues trying to get the impromptu meeting back on track. The current curriculum is a joke and I will be working with the rest of the academy's staff as well as hiring additional staff to remedy this problem. Raven has a few of the teachers pass around handouts to the parents and allows them a few moments to look over the new courses for each year. You have all been given a general outline covering what we will be teaching your children, he tells them. If you feel that the new curriculum is too extreme for your children or you don't approve of the classes that are going to be taught at the academy, then you are free to remove your children from the academy at any time. Raven sends the remainder of the meeting explaining his plans for the students under his care along with the reasoning behind the changes being made, and by the end of the meeting he was ready to beat the stuffing out of almost every civilian parent in the room. Sheep, he almost yells to himself in his still empty office, they are all fucking sheep. I hope you're talking about the parents and not your students, a voice says from the door, letting Raven know that he was no longer alone. Looking up, Raven sees Hiyashi along with Makoto entering the room. Although I am inclined to agree, Hiyashi adds with an almost disgusted tone of voice. It is rather discouraging how easily they accepted your plans once they learned who your father, teammate and sensei were. Don't remind me, Raven groans, dropping his head onto his desk with an audible thump. Has Konoha really fallen so far that a person's lineage and associations mean more to the public than their own actions and accomplishments? Sadly, I believe it has, the leader of the Hyuga clan answers. I know it matters a great deal among my own clan, he reminds his old friend. As much as I wish it was otherwise. Your ideas certainly are innovative. Makoto interrupts the two men, trying to bring the subject back around to the reason for their visit. So you're really going to teach them your personal taijutsu style? Hi, Raven replies as they sit down in the pair of chairs in front of his desk. It's not the best style, I'll admit, but it'll give them a good basic style to start with for developing their own personal fighting style. It's also easily incorporated into any of the existing styles already out there, even the clan's different taijutsu styles. This is true. Hiyashi smirks, referring to the way that he and his brother, Hizashi, had incorporated several of the moves they had learned from sparring with Raven when they were younger into their own variations of their clan's Juken Ryu. It will be interesting to see how many of your students actually remain enrolled in the academy long enough to graduate, he tells his longtime friend. I actually expect between one-third to half of the students currently enrolled to drop out by the end of the year, Raven tells them. In all honesty, I expect that rate to hold true for each of the coming years, he adds thoughtfully. I really don't see any more than, say, 9 to 15 students from each first-year class remaining in the academy for the full 4 years, he says with a chuckle, seeing their shocked expressions at the academy's new projected dropout rate. But I expect every student that graduates to be able to complete their first C-ranked mission within the first month of graduation and to easily complete the Chunin exams within their first year of eligibility. While those certainly are some rather high expectations, Hiyashi says, letting his friends see the surprise on his face. But given the changes being made to the curriculum, I can see why you would be confident in your students' ability to meet them. I agree, Makoto adds. You're doing a wonderful job so far, and if you need anything, please don't hesitate to ask. Not like you ever have, she adds with a giggle. Well, now that you mentioned it, Raven draws out with an evil smirk that they both know all too well. I could use an instructor of your expertise, Makoto-chan, to teach these children the proper use of stealth. He tells her. I would be happy to, she replies with a smile. It'll give me something to do while Sasuke-kun's in school, while allowing me to keep an eye on his studies. Both men chuckled at that. And if the Hyuga clan would be willing, he adds, staring Hiyashi directly in the eyes, she will need an assistant to help her gauge their progress. I shall see what I can arrange, the Hyuga leader tells him. I'm sure I can find at least one member of the branch family suitable for the task. Thanks, Raven tells him before looking over the notes on his desk. Uchihas and Hyugas check, he says, making a few quick notes to a piece of paper. Now I need to ask Sume and the others for their assistance before my meeting on Friday. Oh joy, he adds sarcastically to himself. Talking to yourself again? Makoto inquires with a playful smirk. You would think someone in your situation, shall we say, would be more careful about being caught doing something like that, she teases. Force of habit, Raven replies before looking back over his notes. I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to convince the council to agree to the new budget, he confides in them. I've been looking over the Academy's annual budget reports, and it is no wonder the quality of the genins graduating each year continues to drop given the budget cuts being made. It takes a lot of money to run a village, Hiyashi informs the newly reinstated Junin. Sometimes funds have to be shuffled around from one expense to pay for another. I know that, Raven almost growls in frustration, but this is a shinobi village. Certainly the Academy's budget should take priority. I mean, how can we continue to function when the program designed to train our military, which by the way provide the majority of the village's economy, suffers? A valid point, the Hyuga leader concedes. Perhaps if you were to demonstrate to the council the potential results of your proposal, they might be willing to grant you the additional funding you require. Brilliant, Raven exclaims. Why the hell didn't I think of that? You've been out of the game for a number of years, his friend points out. How about giving them a practical demonstration? Hiyashi suggests, let's say Naruto against the top genin squad currently in circulation. That's not a bad idea, Raven thinks aloud. Naruto is above average for what a second-year student would be under my proposed curriculum, he informs them. And even with a full year's experience under a competent Junin instructor, they would only be around, say, the new level for a third-year student. It could work. Don't you think you're giving them and their sensei too little credit? Makoto asks, slightly worried. What if they have more than a year's experience and their sensei's training is better than you're giving them credit for? Then the credit for their victory would go to their sensei's training regiment and not the Academy's training, Raven points out. Either way, it would still serve to demonstrate just how poorly funded the Academy actually is. A win-win situation regardless of outcome, Hiyashi agrees. Friday could not arrive quickly enough for Raven's liking. He spent the entire week not only preparing Naruto for his upcoming handicap fight but also speaking with the heads of every shinobi clan as well as several shinobi still on active duty, including Junin and a few Anbu, in order to ensure that he had the best possible instructors for each of the Academy's new courses. By the time he and Naruto arrive at the council chamber, Raven already had the political backing of nearly the entire shinobi population as well as the beginnings of a new pilot program requiring each potential Junin sensei to spend 1 year teaching at the Academy in order to familiarize themselves with their prospective future genin squads. Now all that remains is to convince the civilians on council to approve the funding for the Academy's new budget, Raven thinks to himself as he and his ward stand before fully the assembled council. Before we begin, the Hokage says, calling the meeting to order, I wish to thank everyone here for taking the time out of their busy schedules to attend this meeting. I believe everyone here is familiar with Raven-san's appointment as the head of our ninja academy. As it was Raven-san that requested this meeting, I shall allow him to explain to us the exact reason behind his request. Thank you, Hokage-sama, Raven says, bowing to the elderly Kage. Ladies and gentlemen of the council, he begins, looking each of them in the eyes. As many of you are aware, the academy is woefully underfunded, and as a direct result the quality of each year's graduating class continues to steadily decline. As a result, each year's so-called Rookie of the Year is actually only about as skilled as the previous year's so-called Dobi. He informs them, earning several nods of agreement as well as more than a few gasps of disbelief. Under my proposed curriculum, I can ensure that not only will the quality of each graduating class continue to rise, but so too will the overall quality of Konoha's entire military force, he adds. While this may be true, Raven-san, Danzo speaks up. You're requesting nearly 3 times the academy's current budget, he points out. Surely you must realize that such funding will be difficult for this council to authorize, even if we were willing to agree to such a request. Hi, I am aware of this, Raven replies. I am also aware of the fact that many members of this council are unwilling to allocate the necessary funding, as it would require shuffling funds from several of the village's other programs in order to meet my requested annual budget for the academy. Given your, shall we say, track record, Danzo continues with an almost conspiring smirk, that you are prepared to offer this council some type of compromise or some measure of assurance that it would be in this council's best interest to grant your request. I am prepared to offer a practical demonstration for this council if that is what you are asking, Raven replies. Kami, I hope this works, he thinks to himself. I am willing to allow my ward, whose current skill level is above average for a second-year student under my proposed curriculum, to fight against the top genin squad currently in circulation, he tells them. Are you sure about this, Raven-san? Homura asks his former teammate's adopted son. That particular team is slated to enter the upcoming Chunin exam and is heavily favored to be promoted, he warns the Junin he has respected for many years, having watched him grow from a young child into the man now standing before him. Hi Homura-sama, Raven replies. I am aware of the risks involved with allowing Naruto-kun to fight them, he admits. I am also aware that their skill level is the result of their senseis and their clan's training and not the skills they learned at the academy, he adds. This demonstration is only to show the council the benefits to Konoha that my proposal has to offer, he tells them. I know Naruto's chances are slim, and in all likelihood he may not even win, he says, placing a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. But I have every confidence in his abilities and have no doubts that he will surprise all of you. Then we shall hold the match tomorrow morning, the Hokage says, adjourning the meeting until the following day. The next morning, Naruto stands in the designated combat arena with 3 teenagers and 3 fairly decent-sized dogs. His nervousness is clearly written on his face as the Inuzuka Kunoichi looks over at him with an almost feral grin. They've got to be kidding us, she tells her teammates. They honestly expect us to fight this kid? He looks like he's about to wet his pants and the fight hasn't even started yet. Don't take this so lightly, Hana-chan, her raven-haired teammate cautions. According to Itachi-sama, that kid, as you called him, has been training with the Hokage's son for over 4 years. So what's C for Kun? She asks him. The kid's obviously no match for the 3 of us. Remember what Hishu-sensei always tells us, their pale-eyed teammate reminds them. Underestimating an enemy can easily result in your defeat, he adds, quoting their Junin instructor. Yeah, whatever, Hamaru-kun. Hana responds, clearly bored. Let's just get this over with so we can go home. I've got a date this afternoon, she tells him. Up in the Hokage's box, Raven sits with the Hokage and his 2 former teammates as well as the Genin sensei. Even though today is the first time that the 2 Junin have actually met, Hishu Yakuma is well aware of what Raven is attempting to do with the academy thanks to his talks with his fellow Junin senseis, and fully supports his fellow Junin's proposal. Everyone seems ready, the Hokage tells them. Let's begin, shall we? He says, signaling the referee to begin the match. I wish to apologize in advance for any harm that my squad may cause your ward, Hishu tells Raven. They tend to get a little overzealous, shall we say. I'm not too worried, Raven tells the other man. With an Inuzuka and Uchiha and a Hyuga as his opponents, Naruto will have a good opportunity to learn firsthand the different fighting styles of three of Konoha's most prominent clans. Besides, he chuckles, it's not like they'll be able to predict his attacks anyways. What do you mean? The other Junin inquires. He's just an academy student. Surely he can't hope to defeat them. Maybe not, Raven admits. But he's not your typical academy student. At least not typical of the academy's former students anyways, he reminds the man. True, Hishu concedes. Let's just see what happens. Down on the field, the match is already underway with Naruto producing 5 Kage Bunshin, allowing him to battle his 6 opponents one-on-one. While his clones deal with the nin dogs and the males on the team, he himself engages the kunoichi in a taijutsu fight. Using his smaller size to his advantage, he drops below her guard and grabs the front of her shirt with both hands before jumping up to plant both feet into her stomach and pulling backwards. Using the momentum from his throw along with their combined weight, he pulls the surprised Inuzuka towards the ground and rolling through the landing brings himself around atop her with both of his knees in her stomach. Maintaining a hold on her shirt with his left hand, he punches her face with his right fist before pushing off her midsection with his knees and twisting around in midair, while maintaining his grip on her shirt, to bring his right knee to the side of her face. Releasing his grip with his left hand, he grabs hold of her shirt with his right hand before punching her in the stomach with his left fist. His left knee connects with her ribs just before he brings his left elbow down on her stomach, causing her to rise up from the force of the impact only to have the side of her face punched by his right fist, knocking her out, the entire altercation taking less than 5 seconds from beginning to end. Damn! A wide-eyed slack-jawed Sume exclaims, watching her eldest child completely decimated within such a short time frame. I knew Raven taught Naruto-kun his taijutsu style, but Kami damn. Hanakin never had a chance once Naruto-kun got a hold of her, Kuromaru tells his mistress. Although the pup still needs work as most of his attacks are still a bit sloppy. Refinement comes with practice and experience, Shibi reminds his former teammates Nin Dog, although the boy's progress is still rather impressive. The 3 Haimaru siblings are all taken down quickly in an identical fashion as the Kage Bunshins fighting them grab their front paws as the 3 Nin Dogs lung for them. Using the momentum of the initial attacks, they roll through, bringing their feet up to the nin dogs' stomachs, bringing them around so that the familiars' heads connect with the unforgiving ground with the bunshins on top of their chests. Moving their hands from the siblings' paws to the fur of their throat, the clones then slam the poor animals' heads against the ground, knocking all 3 out in the span of 2 seconds. Even though Himaro Hyuga warned his teammate about underestimating their opponent, he was guilty of the same overconfidence that led to his teammate and her canine companions being swiftly defeated. Attempting to engage the bunshin in front of him in taijutsu proved to be a fatal mistake, as the clone grabbed his right wrist while sidestepping a Juken strike to the chest. The Kage Bunshin quickly capitalizes on the Hyuga's mistake and, pulling the teen off balance by the arm it's holding, its left hand connects with a hard chop to the Hyuga's throat, causing the older boy to lean back. Still holding on to the Hyuga's wrist, the clone uses his left hand to grab hold of the teen's throat and brings the small of the genins back down onto the point of its left knee. As the Hyuga grunts in pain, the clone's left elbow connects with his face before its knee forces him back up just enough to remove its knee from his back as it twists around to grab his right wrist with its left hand, while its right knee connects with his stomach as they fall back to the ground with the bunshin kneeling on Himaro's stomach. The Kage Bunshin finishes the branch family member off with a powerful palm thrust to the face that results in the genin's nose being broken as his world suddenly flashes bright white before being plunged into total darkness. For perhaps the second time in his genin career, Sefer Uchiha is wishing that he and his teammates had never accepted their current assignment. This kid is way too good to be a mere academy student, His thinks as he once again dodges another of the Shadow clone's attempts at grabbing him. Itachi-sama says that this is what this Raven-san is going to be teaching at the academy. He thinks in amazement as his eyes suddenly see his team completely decimated in the span of about 15 seconds. Damn, almost makes me wish I was still enrolled in the academy. With their own opponents defeated, Naruto and his other bunshins move to assist the one fighting the Uchiha. Looks like it's time to step this up a notch, Sefer says to himself. Sharingan, he calls out as his dark eyes suddenly flash blood red with 2 black tomes each. His Sharingan begins spinning as time seems to slow down enough for him to keep track of his 6 opponents. Pressing his new advantage, he quickly dismisses the 5 clones with 5 well-aimed kunais to the chest before sidestepping the original's attempted grab and delivering a hard chop to the back of the blonde's neck, ending the match. "I must say, Raven-san," Hishu begins, "that was very impressive. If the other students turn out to be even half as good that boy of yours, then I might consider taking on another genin team after these 3 are promoted." "I'll keep that in mind." Raven chuckles as the medic nins begin reviving the competitors. "Although to be honest, Naruto's only above average for what I intend all of my second-year students to be under the new program," he tells him. "Damn," Hishu whistles at the statement. "If that's what a second year is capable of, I'd love to see what the genin will be like," he says with an almost wishful look on his face. Raven laughs at the man's expression before clasping a hand on his shoulder. "They'll be a lot stronger than almost any other genin Konoha has seen in almost 20 years, he says with a grin. Following Naruto's match with the genin team, the council eagerly agreed to provide Raven with the additional funding he requested for the academy and were looking forward to seeing his first graduating class in 2 years. Even with the additional 2 classes being held back, Raven knew that his first graduating class would be one of the smallest in Konoha history, but he also knew that each one of his students would go on to be Konoha shinobi. "Quality over quantity," he had said when informing them of his projected dropout rate for each year. While they would prefer a larger number of actual graduates each year, they were willing to settle for a larger number actual shinobi, especially when Raven assured them that all of his graduating students would pass the final genin exam given by their Junin senseis. "Now all I had to do is teach them what they need to know and prove that my program truly was worth the headaches it took to get it started," Raven groans. "What the hell have I gotten myself into?" "Alright class, listen up," Raven tells the first years. "Today you're going to learn about cryptography," he informs them. Now many of you may be wondering just what exactly is cryptography. In short, it's the skill used to encode and decode information you don't want others to know about. The most basic form of cryptography is called a cipher and generally involves using symbols, numbers or other letters to replace the actual letters or words in the message. The secret to decoding a cipher is known as the key, which contains the secret to unlocking the cipher, whether in the form of corresponding letters and symbols or the use of key words and phrases. Turning his back to the class, he writes out a quick sample of a cipher and a key on the blackboard as an example before turning back to speak to them again. What you see behind me is perhaps the most basic type of cipher and key you'll ever encounter in your life and is generally used by civilian merchants in one form or another, he tells them. As you can see from the key, each actual letter in the cipher has a corresponding letter in the key. In this case, F replaces A and G replaces B and so on. Now, using the key I've written on the blackboard, I want you all to decode the cipher for me. After only a minute or two, everyone in the class has successfully decoded the extremely simple cipher, and collecting their papers, Raven smiles as he skims over the results. "Not bad," he says, putting the papers on the desk. "Now I know what a few of you are thinking, and if you think you can get away with it, you're more than welcome to try coming up with your own ciphers for your note passing." He grins, shocking every student in the room, especially those that had actually considered doing just that. Laughing at their expressions, he decides to explain his reasons to them. "This is a shinobi training school," he reminds them. "As such, it is our job to prepare for the life of a shinobi. One of the things you'll need to learn is how to get vital information into the right hands while at the same time preventing enemy shinobi from acquiring said information." He allows them a moment to let his words sink in before throwing them a slight curve in the form of a challenge that he knows most of them cannot refuse. "Think of it as a training exercise," he begins with an almost evil glint in his eyes. "You are a shinobi on a mission, with your notes being the information and your friends are your contacts. We as your teachers are the enemy shinobi trying to intercept that information, and it is your job to get that information to your contact without getting caught." The contemplating looks on their faces is almost priceless as he continues to reel them into his little game. However, he cautions them before they get too far ahead of themselves. "Just like on a real mission, there will be consequences to pay if you are caught," he says, informing them of the rules of his game. "If you are caught passing notes, you will be punished," he tells them. "And if we are able to decipher the message, we will read it in front of the entire class." This causes an uproar as everyone in the class cries out about how fair the terms are, causing Raven to laugh even more. "Life isn't fair," he informs them, "and anyone telling you differently is lying. You don't have to participate if you don't want to and can just stick to the exercises. tests and homework we provide in class in order to learn this. However, if you're really serious about learning cryptography and improving your shinobi skills, then I would encourage you not get caught and work hard on creating your own ciphers so unique that we can't decode them." End flashback. He is brought out of his memories a half-hour later by the cry of "finished" from one of his students. Leading them back to the academy, he can't help but chuckle as Kiba and Naruto bicker the entire trip over whose fault was that they'd been caught. Raven's first few months at the academy saw drastic changes to both the curriculum as well as to its teaching staff. Following the council's approval for increased funding, he had enlisted the shinobi and kunoichi of every clan as well as several clanless shinobi and kunoichi specialists to help teach the students everything they would need to learn in order to succeed in the shinobi world. The Ino Shika Cho trio were more than happy to pass on their knowledge to the younger generation, and while they could not teach any of their clan's specialties at the academy, each was a master of their own chosen field. Shikaku taught cryptography and strategy to the first-year students in the form of board games such as shogi and go, while Inoichi was not only the academy's counselor but also taught the finer points of interrogation and information gathered to the fourth-year students. While the Akamichi are known to eat just about anything they can get their hands on, Shuza proved that his clan had an almost intimate knowledge of nutrition and was almost ecstatic to pass on this knowledge to as the academy's dietary consultant. For her part, Sume almost jumped at the chance to get away from the headaches of paperwork and clan head duties to assume the role as the academy's wilderness survival and tracking instructor along with her canine companion Kuromaru. Although neither Shibi nor Hiyashi were able to get away from their responsibilities the way their friends were, each had sent two of their clan's junin in their place in order to help with teaching tracking, stealth and wilderness survival. Among the clanless shinobi instructors under his command, Raven placed Anko and Guy in charge of the academy's physical fitness program, although he had regularly keep an eye on the two to ensure that they never went overboard within the training. Kurenai was his primary genjutsu instructor, while Kakashi easily fell into the role of chief ninjutsu instructor after a few well-chosen threats to his precious collection along with his manhood if he ever showed up more than a couple minutes late without an acceptable excuse. Even though he had originally planned on teaching the taijutsu class himself his other duties and proven to be more than he had originally expected, even with the use of Kage Bunshin, so he had enlisted his younger brother Asuma for the task. Like Naruto, he had taught Asuma his taijutsu style when he was still in the academy, and though Asuma was nowhere near Raven's level in its use, not that anyone ever would be, he was still more than proficient enough in its use to teach it at the academy level. All in all, things were shaping up well for the academy, and in a few years' time the final results of all of Raven's hard work would be proven as his first graduating class joined Konoha's military forces as competent genin. 6 months into his first year as head of the academy, Raven was returning home late from the academy after another long meeting with the angry civilian parents of his next batch of cleaning crew, as he called the students that were to be punished the following morning by helping to clean up Konoha early the next morning before most of the citizens and even a few shinobi are even awake. Kami, I hate dealing with civilians who know nothing about what shinobi actually do. The first thing Raven had done once he assumed control of the academy was speak with the Hokage about establishing a form of punishment they called community service. The community service is actually a collection of D-ranked missions where the students being punished would clean up a certain section of Konoha, such as the market district or the park, around 5 o'clock each morning so that some poor genin team didn't have to, and in return the money that the genins would have been paid for completing the mission goes to the academy. The civilian school has detention and no one complains when a student gets sent there, but when we give our students detention their parents throw a fit. He groans mentally remembering the nearly 3-hour-long meeting he just left. Flashback. Raven rubs his temples trying to alleviate some of the pain caused by his latest headache, the source of which was currently sitting across from him. The civilian parents of 5 of the 12 students that were scheduled to serve community service the following morning for one reason or another were currently yelling at him, demanding to know the reason why their children were being punished and what sort of punishment requires children to be up at 5 in the morning. Okay, let me get this straight. One of the mothers says, as if her high-priced kimono or his regal bearing can intimidate the battle-hardened Junin. You're saying that my sweet little Tensai-kun has to lower himself to picking up trash in the market just because some no-class nobody says he was copying off of her during some test? Exactly, Raven sighs, trying desperately to refrain from ripping the silver spoon from the woman's ass and beating her to death with it. In accordance with the Academy's new policy, students caught in violation of the school rules or behaving in a manner deemed unfitting for a shinobi are sentenced to community service and have to clean up a designated section of Konoha the following morning under the supervision of one of their academy instructors. "We know what Tensai-san did," one of the other students' fathers says, trying to defuse the situation. "But what did our children do to warrant receive community service as you called it?" "You're Kumiko-chan's father," Raven asks the man, receiving a nod. "She and Manaka-chan were caught passing encrypted notes in class," he informs him and Manaka's parents. "While we do encourage our students to practice their cryptography and are even willing to let them pass alone encoded messages to each other, they all understand that being caught passing notes, just like being caught cheating," he adds, looking at Tensai's mother, "comes with consequences. In this case they're punished with community service." "And what about our sons?" the mother of one of the other students asks. "Tomiko and Genki were caught trying to sneak out of class," he tells the woman. "They might have made it too if they had been a bit quieter when opening the window," he chuckles. "So I take it that I'm correct in assuming that they are all being punished because they got caught and not because they were breaking any school rules?" Genki's father asks, still trying to figure out just what the hell was going on in his son's school. "Exactly," Raven replies. "We don't care if the students pass notes, sneak out of class, or even cheat, since those are skills that can help them later in their shinobi careers," he tells them. "What we do care about is them getting caught, since getting caught by enemy shinobi on a mission can easily result in not only the mission's failure but also in their death and or Konoha falling into enemy hands." "Preposterous," Tensai's mother exclaims. "They're just school children and you're acting like they're soldiers going off to war with the fate of this village in their hands." "They will be soldiers once they graduate," Raven informs her. "Until then it is my job to make sure that they are prepared for the harsh reality of shinobi life." By turning every little thing they do into some sort of sick, twisted mission, she snaps at him. "My son is not a soldier and I will not stand for you treating him as such," she tells him. "I'll go to the council and have them overrule your insane and unfair treatment of our children. I regret to inform you that as long as I am head of this academy, the council and the Hokage himself no longer have any say in how I choose to run this academy, nor can they overrule the punishments I have assigned to any student under my care. You can always be removed from your position," she threatens. "You are more than welcome to try," he counters. "But until that day your son will either follow my rules and serve the punishment assigned to him, or he will be removed from the academy's student registry." "You can't do that," she bellows when the council hears of this. "They will do nothing about it," he informs her. "Just as you are within your rights to pull your child out of the academy because you do not like the way I am training him, and he is within his rights to drop out because he no longer wishes to become a shinobi, I am well within my rights to terminate any student who I do not feel is capable of becoming a shinobi of Konoha. Then I will find a competent shinobi to take my precious Tensai-kun on as their apprentice," she tells him, causing him to laugh. "Only the Hokage can authorize an apprenticeship," he informs her between chuckles. "And even if he did agree to such a request, all the eligible Junin sensei not currently in active mission rotation or teaching here at the academy already have their own genin teams, so there is no one for your son to apprentice under." End flashback. A sudden flare of chakra breaks Raven out of his train of thought as instincts born of decades of shinobi training kick into high alert. With speed acquired over several years of active and inactive duty, he races towards the source of the chakra and gasps in horror at the sight before him. In all his years of battles and wars, never in his life has he seen anything even remotely close to the atrocity he is now witness to. Black flames dance across the streets and the rooftops of the Uchiha compound, burning Uchiha shinobi, both living and dead, to ash as it consumes everything in its path. Women and children run in terror, scrambling for escape as they frantically rush towards the gates. A lone figure stands behind the black flames with a look of maniacal joy at the carnage it has created as its twin blood-red eyes with their black three-pointed shurikens gaze out upon the death and destruction. "Mangekyo Sharingan," Raven growls as he feels Hachibi's chakra beginning to flow through his coils. "Everybody out," he shouts before leaping high into the air. At the apex of his leap channels the demonic chakra through his coils and out of his mouth, spraying a demonic green flame towards the all-consuming black fire. As the demonic dragon fire collides with the black Amaterasu flames, green consumes black before both fade from existence, leaving only ash and debris. "Shisui," Raven calls out the name of the man trying to eradicate his own clan. What the hell are you doing? The Uchihas have grown soft and need to be purged, the Junin tells him. And you will not stop me from my chosen path. The Mangekyo Sharingan spins as Raven's world suddenly changes to a photographic negative version of the real world with a full blood red moon hanging high in the starless sky. Welcome to the world of the Tsukuyomi, Shisui tells him. For the next 72 hours you will watch as I destroy not only the Uchihas but also destroy all that you hold dear right before your eyes over and over again. Raven gives the young Junin an evil almost sadistic grin from his position. He is strapped to a large black and white cross in the center of the Uchiha compound, and even though the genjutsu is powerful enough to shatter the minds of anyone caught within its effects, it proves useless against the Jinchuriki. You think this little illusion can hold me? He asks with a sickeningly sweet voice. Boy, you haven't lived long enough or seen anywhere near enough of the horrors of this world to create anything anywhere near capable of breaking me, he tells the Rouge Shinobi. Live a few more decades and fight a few actual wars, and then maybe one day you'll be able to make me flinch, he adds, breaking out of his restraints. Too bad you'll never have that chance, he snarls as the photo-negative image of an eight-tailed dragon overlaps his as he charges the shocked Uchiha before plunging his clawed superimposed hand through the younger Junin's chest, ripping his heart out through his back. Back in the real world, several squads of Anbu as well as every nearby shinobi feels the bursts of demonic chakra emanating from the Uchiha sector of the clan district and rush to investigate what's happening. Along the way they encounter several Uchiha civilians and the few surviving genin who quickly tell them about Shisui's rampage and his attempted massacre. They also tell them how Raven was still fighting the traitor when they left and how he used some kind of weird Kekkei Genkai to counter the Amaterasu's unbeatable black flames. By the time the other Konoha shinobi arrive, a panting Raven is kneeling in the middle of the street while a no-dead Shisui lays on the ground 3 feet in front of him with no obvious signs of injury. Good, Raven says to them between pants. You guys and clean up, he tells them before passing out from using so much of Hachibi's demonic chakra for the first time in several years. It's been nearly 2 weeks since the incident everyone has dubbed the Uchiha massacre, and while most of the civilian members of the clan, Makoto along with Sasuke and a total of 7 genin including Seifer survived, the rest of the clan including Itachi and the entire military police force was laid to rest in a mass funeral 3 days later. Raven was unable to attend the funeral due to severe chakra exhaustion and wasn't released from the hospital until 2 days after the funeral. As a result of the massacre, Makoto was forced to resign her teaching position at the academy in order to assume the role of head of her clan until Sasuke was old enough to take over for her. For his part, Sasuke had begun to withdraw from the other children at the academy and became more determined to become stronger. His desire for more power was beginning to border on obsession when Makoto asks Raven to have a talk with her only surviving son. Raven calls the young Uchiha into his office just before the end of class so that he can speak with the young heir. Your mother tells me that you're taking Shisui's betrayal pretty hard, he begins, giving his student an understanding look. I know you don't want to talk about it, and normally I wouldn't pry, except your mother is one of my best friends and she's worried about you. She needs to mind her own business and let me focus on my training, Sasuke almost snaps at the Junin. You are her business, Sasuke, Raven replies with an almost harsh glare. Don't forget that while you lost your father and brother, she lost her husband and son, he reminds the boy. You're all she has left and you need each other if you're to get past this and move on with your lives. I don't need anyone, the raven-haired academy student nearly snarls at his mother's former teammate. I need to become stronger so that no one ever forgets that the Uchihas are still a great and powerful clan. Before Sasuke can even blink, he's lifted up out of his chair and slammed against the wall behind him. I don't ever want to hear of you saying anything like that again, Raven growls as his eyes flash an eerie reptilian green for a second before returning to a cold hardened onyx. It's that line of thinking that led to Shisui turning on your clan, and so help me Sasuke, if you go down that path, not even your mother will be able to stop me from doing to you what I did to him. You leave her out of this, Sasuke growls, she's got nothing to do with any of this. Wrong again, Sasuke, Raven answers before dropping the boy on his rear before slowly walking back to his desk. Makoto-chan has everything to do with this, and so does Itachi and the rest of the fallen Uchiha, he says as he sits down once again and signals for his student to do the same. What happened 2 weeks ago was an unfortunate and tragic incident. I won't deny it, but you're taking your grief to a level that is entirely unhealthy, not only for you and your clan but for your friends and the rest of the village, and I won't allow that. What can you do? Sasuke snaps at the man. Expel me. Go right ahead, I don't care. I don't need your or this school. I'll become stronger on my own, and when I am, everyone will know that the Uchihas are a clan to be feared and no one will dare mess with us again. Once again, Sasuke has no time to even register what happens as he once again finds himself pinned against the back room of the office as Raven's hand threatens to crush the life out of him. Looking into the boy's eyes, the Jinchuriki sees pain and fear hiding behind rage, anger, hatred and defiance, and can't help but feel sorry for the poor boy that's lost so much recently. Dropping Sasuke to the ground once again, Raven kneels in front of the young Uchiha and places his hand upon the boy's shoulder. It's okay to miss those that are gone, and it is okay to cry, he tells the raven-haired child. Tears are a natural part of the grieving process and they help to cleanse away the pain we feel from the loss of a loved one. Bullshit, Sasuke snaps, swatting the offending hand away. Only the weak cry, he informs his sensei, and an Uchiha is never weak. Oh really? Raven inquires. Tell me, Sasuke, who's the strongest person you've ever known? Itachi Nisan, Sasuke answers without a second thought, and he never cried. Actually, Itachi-kun used to cry quite a bit when he was younger, Raven tells him. I also know for a fact that all three of the legendary Sannin as well as every one of Konoha's Hokages has cried at some point in their lives. Hell, I've seen the Yondaime himself cry when we ourselves were still students here at the academy, he says. Of course that was after your old man spilled his ramen into his crotch, he adds with a small chuckle, causing Sasuke to grin slightly. The point is, Sasuke, everyone cries and it's not a sign of weakness to admit that you're hurting inside. Or in Minato's case, between his legs, he grins, it just proves that you're still human. Then what am I supposed to do? Sasuke asks. Live, Raven answers without a second thought. Live and grow stronger, he tells the young clan heir. Not so you can prove that the Uchihas are still the best, but so that you can protect those you love so that they never have to feel the same pain you're going through. You're talking about the will of fire, aren't you? Sasuke asks, referring to something Itachi had mentioned to him a few weeks before his death. Hi, Raven answers, the will of fire connects everyone in this village to each other. It's what allows the shinobi of the village to continue to push ourselves to our limits in order to protect not only Konoha but our loved ones as well. If you want to know what true strength is, Sasuke, he says, pulling out an old photograph of his genin team from his desk before sliding it towards the Uchiha. Then look at that and tell me what you see. Sasuke studies the picture for a few minutes before speaking. I see you and Kasen with a white-haired man and a blonde that looks a lot like an older Naruto, he tells the man. That blonde is Minato Namikaze, Raven tells him, and the white-haired man is Jiraiya of the Sannin. That picture was taken after our first month as an official genin team. What does that have to do with this true strength you were talking about? Sasuke asks him. The four of us were more than just teammates, Sasuke. Raven answers, taking the photo back before looking at it sadly. In a lot of ways we were a family, he tells his student without looking up from the picture. All four of us were orphans, and while I was adopted there was still a connection, and it was that connection that led each of us to continually push ourselves to new heights in our training. Neither of us wanted to be the weak link in the group that got the others killed, and because of that we never stopped training, never stopped growing stronger. It was our love and devotion for each other that was the driving force behind our quickly growing strength and skill. I don't follow, Sasuke informs his mother's former teammate. Of course you wouldn't since you're still young, Raven informs him. It's like this, Sasuke, he says, putting the picture away. When you become a shinobi you'll learn one unavoidable and potentially deadly fact, he says, looking back at the young Uchiha heir. That fact is that for all your strength, for all your power and for all your skill there will always, and I do mean always, be someone out there that is better than you. The only thing you can really do about it is to continue to train and continue to push yourself in order to prepare for this unknown enemy. This is what each of us did, he tells the boy. Not for our own sakes but in order to protect our teammates from this imaginary opponent. So that's it, huh? Sasuke asks. You became stronger by training for this imaginary enemy in order to protect your teammates. Exactly, Raven replies. I still don't get it, the young heir admits. Let me put it this way, Raven begins trying to clarify things for the obviously baffled Uchiha. The secret to unlocking real power isn't to find something worth living for but to find someone worth dying for. That person or persons you love enough to lay down your life without a second thought or a moment's hesitation. For it is only in that moment of complete surrender that a shinobi can fully unlock their full power. Someone worth dying for, Sasuke repeats as he rolls the idea around in his mind, looking at it from all angles as if trying to dissect its full meaning. I'll think about it, he promises. That's all I can ask, Raven replies before allowing Sasuke to go home. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.